to get started. Oh, there we go. So it is 4:30, so I will call to order this edition of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee for March 14th, 2023. We will do our call order, and looks like we have everybody actually in attendance. Half of us here locally and a couple people remotely. So approval of the minutes. If everybody has had a chance to review or look at those, are there, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Also,
We have a second. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes?
corrections, but a comment.
A comment. Can you turn your microphone on so that the folks at home can hear us?
Right. Well, the comment is, recording secretary last time, Michelle's last time with us, and she's done a fabulous job, and I'm sure glad that with a new person that we got two. Oh, there she is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Melissa.
Melissa.
We kept the same first letter so that we could keep the M's going.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
We're real big on smiles in this committee. Okay. So great job in the past, and I'm looking forward to her work in the future.
There we go. With that, we'll approve the minutes as is. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes. Public comments. Are there any public comments that were submitted via email that you know of, Melissa? Okay. No public comments, so that we will move on to extension. And we'll start off with our area extension director, Kristen.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Larry, you preempted me a little bit, so I'm going to do some introductions of some new staff members. So we have Melissa Burke, and she's our new Michelle, but coming in a different role, though. So Melissa joined us a few weeks ago now, on the 20th of February. And she comes in with a different title. She's our outreach support associate. So she'll be able to do a little bit more with the educators, a little bit more outreach for our department as well. We're really excited about her skill set, and I'm going to let her do the introduction of herself so that you, I didn't warn her I was going to do this. So here, we'll see how she does on the fly.
Thank you for that. I am really, really very pleased to be here with everyone today. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, I come with a very diverse background. I have a degree, first of all, in fine art photography from UW Eau Claire, and I just recently received my other degree in natural resource management from UW Stevens Point. And that was basically what I spent the last 3 years and during COVID doing, was getting a second degree, and it was great fun and I loved it. And with that degree, I was able to focus on environmental education, which brought me around to extension and being really interested in everything that everyone is doing here. And the fact that I get to be the outreach support associate and help everyone with their programming is absolutely amazing, and just support in any way that I can. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Welcome aboard.
Yes, we're really excited to have Melissa on board. Also, if you notice on the screen, there's another person that popped up that's new to us in Dunn County anyway. So Lissa Seafelt is our new dairy educator. As you know, last month we introduced the new ag model. So that did pass through all three committees in all three counties. So we implemented that pretty much immediately after the new contracts were signed, or the new 136 contracts were signed. So so Lissa's joined us today just to kind of say a hello. Jerry wasn't able to join us. And so Lissa, if you want to just give a brief background of yourself, currently has been in the role of educator, ag educator in Eau Claire County. So taking on this new role as dairy educator for the region. So Lissa.
So hi, everyone. Lissa Seefeld. I joined the Eau Claire office in December of 2019. So that's probably when, if you have seen me out and about occasionally, because sometimes meetings overlap, that would have been probably the first time you would have seen me out and about. So been here since December 2019. My background, got my degree from UW River Falls, and then I got my master's from South Dakota State. So that's kind of a little bit of my background there in animal science. And since taking on this position, been doing more of a dairy focus. And so like Kristen said, we're starting to shift, doing more kind of regional work, and we've done a little bit of that in the Chippewa Valley already. We kind of were doing some informal sharing between Jerry Clark and myself. And then when Katie was on, of course, we kind of shared questions around as we got them in. If there was something that was more relevant to me as a dairy educator, Katie might bounce the question to me. If I had something that was maybe more relevant to Jerry as a crops and soils educator, kind of bounce some questions to him. So we all kind of did some informal sharing, and now we've kind of made this more of a formalized arrangement, and looking forward to meeting you in person and getting to know all of you a little bit better, and helping serve the county.
So thank you, Lissa.
Excellent. Welcome aboard.
Jerry couldn't join us. So Jerry is the crops and soils educator. He'll pop on probably one of these months. And you may already know Jerry. He's been around for quite a while. So Lissa's 2019. Jerry's probably, I don't even know, 30 years, 25 years. I don't know, but Jerry's been around for a while. So you probably know Jerry Clark. But he'll pop on as well. So what we're doing now is we're working, Lissa and Jerry and I and the program managers are working to figure out this model and what this might look like. They'll be doing some needs assessment, meeting with partners, meeting with the different counties, and start to build those relationships to then start bringing the programming and develop that in the area. So you'll start to see that on the reports, Lissa and Jerry as crops, and then Jerry as crops and Lissa as dairy. So you'll start to see that on the reports. Other than that, I really don't have any other updates. Thank you.
Do you have any financial? that
Oh,
you need
yes,
to
the
share?
next one, financials. So you got that report. I don't have anything to share. If you have any questions on it, the financials were actually the end of the year financials from last year. As you see, we and I'll take all the credit for this because, you know, we're in the black.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? I'm here now. We did carry forward, as you approved last month, the 9,000, the carry forward request. So that's included in there, and still was able to come in. And that was mainly due to some educator vacancies through the year that allowed for a little bit of wiggle room in the budget. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain. I don't know if I could answer too many of last year's questions, but I certainly can try.
Any supervisors have questions about the financial report? I guess not.
All
I
right.
guess you're off the hook on that.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. So, moving on, we had some a number of extension educator updates that were submitted with your packets. I don't know if anybody had any questions about any of the updates. We do have a few of the other educators here other than our presenter, if people had some questions. If not, then go ahead. Other button.
Was there a vacancy in the food wise field or not? I thought there was.
We have hired Hillary Ross. She is part of our area team. Her office is in Chippewa, but she definitely will be included in Dunn County events. And right now she's actually planning events at Downsville Elementary that she's going to take on as a new educator. So that's awesome.
Nice.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Is Supervisor Quinn, is that a
No,
handout
fine.
or just
No.
itching your chin?
Yeah, I was just scratching my chin.
Okay, wasn't sure. Okay. Seeing none, we're gonna move on to our extension educator presentation, and who I'm assuming Louisa is our presenter today, because you were here early and we're ready to go. So
Right. And I'm running my timer because I know last time we had a long meeting. So this is going to be very short. Each of you should have a handout. Those of you on screen, I will send it as a follow-up email tomorrow morning. I didn't really think about the whole electronic versus paper, and I apologize for that. I should have had that. The work that I'm doing right now, just finishing the community needs assessment, which I had mentioned.
Louisa,
Yeah.
just do a brief introduction for
Oh.
yourself, just for,
Who the heck am I?
yes, for those who may not know.
My name is Louisa Gerasimo, and I've recently taken on a new role. I was in 4-H for 4.5 years, and for the last half year, I've been learning my job in human development and relationships, specifically within family engagement and relationships, which is focused on families and making sure that we prevent harm to children. So within that area, I've been looking to talk to my community partners. I tried to talk to every single organization in this building that had anything at all to do with families, which if you think about it, many of our organizations do have something to do with families. So I talked to a lot of nonprofits and then our community partners right here. Just wrap that up, and now I am working on a plan of work, which is a more formal laying out of what a position or a role is supposed to do in the coming years. And I'm working with my AED and my program manager at Madison. The program manager supervises programmatic work and makes suggestions and connects us to scientific background and well-researched things. And then our AED is my day-to-day manager. And so both of them will be in on that plan of work. I broke down what's in front of you into two different areas, systems level work and direct programming. In the area of systems level work, I wanted to share with you that I was poking around doing my plan of work, and I came through various ways to answer the question of what phone calls are coming from our Dunn County people to that 211 number, which is our Great Rivers where people reach out for help. And the number one thing that they called about last year was housing. And I just wanted to point that out because in my plan of work, as I did the community needs assessment, housing came up a whole bunch of times. And that was something that is going to end up in my plan of work. And I will be taking a leadership role in the housing action team, which is part of Health Done Right. And many of us in Extension are serving on those committees to try and support that effort across the county. I will let you read all of those other things on your own, but I would like to mention in the area of direct programming, I know I've talked about making reading memories, and my partner Heather Pica recorded a short message for you, which I hope Melissa can play.
Here at the Dunn County Jail, we love being part of making reading memories. It gives parents that are incarcerated an opportunity to remain connected with their children and make that bond extra special when they don't have the chance to be there in person. So we're really happy to be able to have that here.
That is your 1-minute testimonial. We made sure it was 1 minute. We've really enjoyed working together, and I think we're doing great things at the jail. Why that's important to us in Dunn County is because those parents, most of the ones that I've recorded stories for, where the book goes home to the child and the parent is recorded reading it in his own or her own shirt, that has ripple effects across our county. Most of those people that I've recorded are from Menominee or outlying areas in Dunn County. These are families that will eventually get reunited when their adult gets out, the other parent. And so trying to keep families connected and cohesive and trying to help those parents be better parents is to make sure that that next generation of trauma doesn't roll into our services and the next generation after that. So we're trying to work from a prevention angle there. I will add on the fun things coming up. I listed some things that I'm doing that don't exactly fit in my plan of work, but we'll let you know why I'm going to be very busy this spring. And one of the things that we just added was I've been asked to help Rachel Hart-Brinson, my former 4-H colleague in Eau Claire, with their leadership day for the Eau Claire Fair. And they had asked us to do real colors until they realized that's a 4-hour workshop. So instead, I'm going to go and do the question thinking workshop from the Inquiry Institute, which helps people ask better questions. Instead of being judgmental, it helps people be more of learners. And that will have a ripple effect across our region, I hope, because as you all know, fair board management can be kind of difficult. And this includes the 4-Hers, Boy Scouts, and other youth leadership organizations, as well as all the volunteers that help at the fair. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Any questions?
One, Lisa, nice piece of information here. I know some of this stuff is court ordered for Parents Forever. Is that
Yes,
right?
that's a court ordered program, but it's open to anybody. So
Sure.
we have people who aren't court ordered who are take the class.
And the rest of them, are there any other ones?
Nothing here is court ordered except Parents Forever.
What's your opinion on if it were more court ordered?
Like if there were more parenting court ordered,
Yeah, I mean,
parenting classes, I mean. Yeah.
you know, we got a lot of different names for different programs in the courts, and they pretty much have to do pretty much with the parents or reoffending or whatever it is. But this idea that we can help the kids through some of these processes.
And
You
I
know, it's
do
extra
think there's a role for extension, and I do have colleagues that work in the what is it called? Something court. Help me out, folks. Yeah, where they're helping move people into something that's going to be positive as opposed to just the punishment part. Diversion, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm turning 59 in a couple weeks and words just go out somewhere else into the ether and they can't be reeled back in sometimes. Yes, diversion court. That's not currently in my plan of work, but I think it's something that the county might want to think about, because you're right, families that are harmed, children that are harmed from all the things that are going on, drugs and alcohol being a big problem in our county. Also, lack of resources. You cannot help people if they do not have a roof over their heads. And that's been proven in country after country. There's some very solid scientific evidence that housing must come first. Safe, reliable housing that people can afford. If you have that in place, then you can help people work on mental health issues, addiction, child rearing. If people are living in their car and occasionally at their aunt and uncle's for a shower, it's really hard to help. That has to happen first. And I think our county has a long way to go, as these 211 calls show. Other counties around here, this is not the first call that they're getting. It's not the biggest number of calls. It's mental health, for instance, or trying to find something else. It's not trying to find housing. So when people come here and our employers can't find houses for them and they're going to Eau Claire, for instance, to find affordable rentals or to purchase a house, that impacts our employers, because that long commute can make people go, oh, this is ridiculous, forget it. It's not worth it. Or somebody moving from out of state to 3M, for instance, they can't find a place for a family to buy an affordable house. That candidate might take another job. And in our current housing market, that has real implications for our employers. So I just wanted to focus a minute on housing, because I think all those things do connect back, that it's really hard to be well and to work on wellness and mental health and physical health if you do not have a place to make dinner. If you don't have a place to take a shower or to wash somebody's PJs, you know, it's something most of us take for granted, but a lot of the families are really struggling to find that kind of housing here.
One more thing, I'm not going to use the whole hour from daylight savings time, but I'll get a part of it.
Just a
We
part of
have
it?
1 minute and 40 seconds
We're
left.
gonna roll the
Okay.
clock back an hour.
And I think I'm correct here. And first of all, I know I'm correct in that who we are is a combination of experiences that we have experienced ourselves or it's seen or whatever. And kids are a big experience of learning from parents, and extension helping parents with kids. Now, I should turn my mic off right now, but you know, we have 3 branches in Dunn County. And the senior Judge Peterson, you know, I knew him when he was a little boy riding bikes around town. The 2 new judges are there, I think in their first year. And I could be wrong, but I don't think either one of them have had families. So when you're making decisions about placements and interaction with kids, you know, the person that has 5 or 6 kids would probably know more about what kids need than the person that hasn't had any children. So, I mean, I think there's a real role for extension in working in the courts, you know, in that they might need some help.
Well, you'll be happy to hear that I am co-facilitating a course called Real Colors. And one of our judges is going to take that with the clerk of courts. We're combining the public health department and clerk of courts, and we have 36 people signed up for that on April 20th. And Rachel Hart-Brinson, who's also trained in Eau Claire, my former 4-H colleague, is coming over to help me with that. So we have a shared facilitation, but that is something that you're right. People have unique experiences. Some people can gain that from education if they don't have it themselves. So I will say under early childhood on the lower left-hand corner of the handout, there is a link there, which I will send this to everybody so that you can just click on the link, but you can search TED Talks and you can search for Every Child Can Thrive by 5, or the name Molly Wright, who is the youngest TED Talk speaker ever. I think she's 6 or 7 years old. It is 7 minutes of adorable, and it also explains why human development and family relationships educators are so important, because we're trying to help people understand how early brain development, how your interaction with little kids, whether they're grandchildren or children or foster kids, can make a humongous difference to them later on. So if you want to have a coffee break and watch something fun, I've put that in there for you. And again, I'll just send this back to everybody tomorrow so that you can just click on the link.
Do any other supervisors have questions for Louisa? Only thing I wanted to bring up with, how long has the Making Reading Memories program been going on so far?
That is a great question. I know that Stephanie Hintz, who had my position before I did, has I think she did it the whole time pretty much that she was there. So probably 4 or 5 years.
Has there
before
been
me.
any anecdotal evidence of like maybe how it's for the participants who've been part of that, how it's maybe helped recidivism or anything like that that has shown some of the positive benefits of the program? I'm sure there's a lot of positive benefits, but it's always nice to have those
Right,
stories that
right,
go along
right.
with it.
It is being studied right now. I actually do not know if recidivism is one of the questions that they're looking at, but UW-Madison got a grant and has a whole raft of people who are following up with not just my people, but all the people across the state who are involved. And we do it once a month. And so we're really only with a particular parent for an hour and 15 minutes. So it's not like we're going to fix recidivism in an hour and 15 minutes. That's a big goal. I'd love to say that I know we're pushing that needle, but I think when people have something to live for and they reconnect with their children, it probably adds another reason to keep their nose clean, keep themselves out of trouble. Don't know about that. That's a great question. And I will actually go ask the researchers of a meeting later this month whether they're studying that.
Yeah, be interesting to find
great
out.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we hope we are helping with
Right.
that.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa, and thank you all of our extension educators. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item 6A. And just for the committee members, I don't know why this is, but after we kind of voted on, we went through all that discussion about funding economic development and had all of that. Suddenly it dropped off of our agenda and we've not talked about it since then. So I've added it back onto the agenda as a permanent item because obviously it's a big part of what this committee does, and we need to be talking about it on a monthly basis. Hence, that's what we're going to do. And for those of you at home, our county manager just passed out a handout, which oh, good. So you guys have it hopefully via email as well.
Yes, I did take a picture of it and email it in order to do it from technology here in the basement.
So there you go. So if you do check your email accounts, I guess you'll have a photo of this, which hopefully you'll be able to read. So with that, Chris, I want to turn things over to you if you wouldn't, if you wouldn't mind, and give us a little bit of a economic a development update. And we might, Ann might ask you too, since you actually are on the Economic Development Board, to share some thoughts with us.
Yeah, so I think that things with the Dunn County EDC are moving along. We did a helped facilitate, Dan Dunbar facilitated on behalf of the county because that's a skill set that he brought forward from his experiences at UW Stout, helped to facilitate a kind of goal setting planning event in January. And that resulted in the board committing to taking a look at its bylaws and mission and the job description of the executive director and having kind of a plan for moving forward. So they took action on that in February, and the various board members are working on those projects this month, and we'll bring those back for the March meeting. So I think there's some movement along those lines. Similarly, the executive director, Bob Bassani, put together a fundraising piece letter and gathered all of the contact information for about 200 letters solicitation to go out. And our Dunn County, as in the county here, is assisting him in getting those stuffed and out the door, since he has no administrative support. So it seemed like a relatively small thing we could do to assist. And then we continue to work on planning an economic development summit, which will happen. It kind of keeps getting pushed back a little bit just because we've been very purposeful about trying to make sure that it's well planned and the right people are at the table. But it will be comprised of the various key stakeholders in the community who are involved in economic development, the Greater Menominee Development Corporation, the Dunn County EDC, CBTC, UW Stout, the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Menominee, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. I think who else? The city, the county. Anyway, there's about 10, I think 10 or 12 we ended up with to be at the table. And Meredith Wentz from UW Stout is going to facilitate that for us. And the planning committee is listed in the notes. And so we've met several times, and we're kind of wrapping that up, and we'll be able to get a date on the calendar. So, and people are really excited about that. People talking to in the economic development community are like, this needs to happen, and there's the right momentum kind of moving forward. Things feel really, really positive. So I'm excited about that. So I think things are moving along well for it being only March of the new year.
Any tentative date now for that summit?
I think
Next
it's probably
month or
ends up,
May,
well, we
or-
were looking at March. Obviously, we missed the March vote, but that was because we threw in an extra planning meeting just to make sure we kind of had things nailed down, and that was good. I think we have a really good committee planning. So I think we're going to meet again, I want to say next week. And then after that, I think we'll be ready to set a date. So it'll just be a matter of coordinating calendars to getting it on the calendar. It'll be 2 meetings, probably 3-hour meetings. And so it'll be good.
Does anybody have any questions for Chris about economic development? Yes, Supervisor Barrier.
Just wanted to say thanks for the picture of the handout. It came through, able to follow along. I really appreciate it.
I would just say one other kind of side note about economic development. I didn't put it in here, but as I settle into my role and spend more time in some of the issues, both self-identified and board identified and community identified, I think there's a bit of I've called it now the 3-legged stool that goes, it almost is that which economic development sits upon. And they all are significant issues in our community as well as communities across Wisconsin. Broadband which obviously this committee is working on facilitating, addressing childcare, which is an enormous issue in our community, and housing. And so I think there are initiatives around all of those things. I attended the Wisconsin Counties Association's Childcare Summit back in February. And I went with the economic support manager from Human Services. And they do the childcare certification for in-home childcare facilities, but she has her finger on the pulse of childcare because of public funding for people who are low income to afford childcare. And so currently, and this is relatively consistent across the state, if you want to have a spot in a childcare center, you need to probably have your spot before you get pregnant. And all of our centers there's 4 centers in Menominee, and all of them are full and have a 2-year wait list.
Wow.
And so childcare is pretty significant, but Stout, Seth Hudson's group has a fancy name for that portion of Stout, but community development, blah, 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 other things all together in a title. But they are working together with a group of people, and Human Services is connected to that to look at procuring what's called a Dream Up grant. It's a $75,000 planning grant that the state's offering, again, to entities who are looking to trying to address that on a broader community basis. So there's things moving in that direction. The housing study is being finalized and it's at its public forums, and that's moving along. Broadband's moving along. So all of those things, while not directly the Dunn County EDC, are definitely things that are happening related to economic development and supporting the infrastructure to that being successful in our community.
Supervisor Vogel, do you have anything to add since you actually serve on the EDC board?
Well, I'm on the job description subcommittee and we're meeting tomorrow. And I didn't know, because it's not in the job description that the executive director comes to these meetings. But is there something, do we want that built in so that we get a report on a regular basis, or?
I guess it would be nice to almost have that if the funding is coming from the county and this is the committee that oversees that funding in a way, it would be probably a good idea. I guess I didn't know that would need to be included in a job description in order to entice that individual to show up. But yeah, that would be actually, if it needs to be, sure. But yes.
I was, yeah, or is there anything else county related that you think hasn't been happening, or?
Not to get into a long economic development theory, but we kind of, some of that was our discussion way back when we had the funding discussion. But it would be good to get regular updates. I think it's great. Our county manager is pulling information from all sorts of different sources. But it would also be good to have a person who's in charge of the EDC be a part of bringing a report. Because one of the things that we used to get from either from Bob or when Stacy was interim director, or going back, was just even some of the updates on some of the businesses that they may be working with, or some upcoming stuff, that kind of thing, that it would be good to just get a brief update.
Okay. Or we can forward minutes or something, just so whether it's written or in person.
And one of the things that, again, even if it's difficult to make an appearance in person, as we can see, we have a couple of supervisors attending remotely, and I've also mentioned it to Kristen that it's a lot of travel for educators all to be here at the meeting, and you can, if it works to just attend remotely on some of them when you're not doing your 10-minute presentation, that works out well too. So That's all I have from me. Does anybody else have any other comments about economic development before we hand things back to Chris for a communications update? I guess not. So Chris, you have the floor again.
Well, I tried to just put the activities in a list. I won't read them to you. I would just say, I think that we have been continuing to do a lot of work focused on communication. And if you haven't had a chance, go out to the county's YouTube page or search it out on Facebook, but see Krista's video on learning about county government, which is about engagement. I think she did a great job on that, and it's getting some views. But I think one of the most exciting things that I think the county will benefit from at large, not just this committee or the work of this committee, but the Menominee Police Chief Atkinson had a large federal grant, and one of the things that he had proposed early in purchase in that is the purchase of the Qualtrics project or product, which is a software program on experience management, because who knows what that means. And so we'll just sell it to you. But it really is around polling and surveying and collecting data so we can use it internally with staff, we can use it externally with residents, we can use it amongst the county board members. I mean, just a lot of different ways to use that. And from his federal grant, he received permission to add us as a user to that contract free of cost for the next 3 years. And they paid for the registration for Dan Dunbar to go out with the group, the 2 people from the city of Menominee, to learn more about that. And Dan has pretty significant Qualtrics experience from his time at the university, and they use that as well. So yeah, super excited about that, because I think it will provide another mechanism for us to just again engage. You can bury a Qualtrics survey or a poll in a social media post, and just like lots of very cool potential. So
Excellent. Do any supervisors have questions for our county manager about communication? Supervisor Bjork.
Because I was at the watershed conference and happened to sit down at a table with managers from the city of Menominee, I guess everybody in the world knows that I believe Lou Prangy, the manager, is retiring.
Lowell.
So it would be nice in communications to find out about him when he comes in, and does he have a role in economic development that, let's be as cordial as possible, and we're really like to know who we are and how you got to Menominee and stuff like
with the
that.
new city manager,
Right.
city administrator? Yes. So that's actually going to be the police chief. Eric Atkinson is becoming the city administrator.
Oh, okay. I guess I was reading about Atkinson, but I did not put the two
Yes,
together.
yes. So
Oh,
he's going
okay.
to be the city administrator, starting in April, mid to late April.
Okay.
And so, yes, but most definitely, lots and lots of ways for there to be
Right.
connection.
Okay, thanks.
All righty. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and this again, since it's part of this committee, the broadband discussion is going to be a permanent part of our agenda. We may not always have a big discussion about it, but we'll just keep it on the agenda whether we have a large discussion or not about either grant opportunities or potential legislation, or in this case, talking about a broadband task force, which is actually one of our action items on the committee. So Chris will bring you back again. And kind of, Sue, we've had a little bit of discussion about it back and forth, but I don't know if all the committee members have necessarily had some of that. So if you want to kind of share some of that, the genesis of creating that task force and where we're going.
Yes, so last month at your meeting, you approved us submitting application to the Public Service Commission for a roughly $16,000 planning grant to look at creating a community being Dunn County wide broadband plan, essentially, looking at gaps, filling those gaps, working with the internet service providers and the municipalities and trying to figure out funding, just all of those pieces. And so again, sort of settling in a little bit to my role, I'm beginning to recognize a little bit of what capacity I have and don't have. So I had a conversation after a meeting with Dan Dunbar because he, I mean, granted, there's a correlation between IT and broadband, but even more so, Dan just has a really good project management kind of brain. And so I asked him if he had capacity to take on kind of the leadership to that broadband piece, so it would have the kind of attention that it would need in order to be successful. And so he said he did, and he hopped into it with both feet. And we got the grant application submitted. It is a non-competitive grant, so we will receive the money. But he also, sort of dove in to figure out what was needed. We need to come up with a preliminary plan that the state then will be able to wrap into their own 5-year plan by mid-June. And he watched the video from last month from Chris Stark's presentation to this committee and talking about that idea of a task force. We did meet with Kristen and talk about extensions, kind of capacity and ability to assist with some of those things. And she's doing some work on that. But in the end, Dan felt like it would be important to establish this work group, and the rules of the board for the county board allow for the committee to establish a work group. Can't have a quorum of the current committee members, but other than that, it can do work assigned by the committee, and it has to have approval of the county board chair before its establishment. So I obtained that approval on your behalf. Chair McCullough is in support of the establishment of that work group as well. So and then Dan listed the potential representation, someone from CRT, an economic development representative, somebody from K-12 education, someone from one of the rural municipalities, someone from the agriculture community, kind of the farming community who have that need for broadband, very rural need for broadband, someone from extension, and then any additional members that the chair of CRT would feel would be appropriate for that. So so I think that we've not heard about the grant applications yet that the various ISPs submitted back in late February for potential funding. It sounds as if from the various webinars that I know Anne's listened to and I've been listening to, whatever, it sounds like the actual BEAD funding, the federal funding coming through on that level will be sometime next year.
Is that part of that planning grant then?
It is. So the state has to have a 5-year implementation plan. And so they essentially kind of pushed that out to the communities, either regionally or singly, to come up with their plans that'll be rolled together for this 5-year plan that needs to be submitted to the federal government by August sometime, I want to say, maybe late July, I don't remember. Our part of it would be due by mid-June. So it's a pretty tight timeline.
Right. Do any supervisors have any questions for Chris about broadband before we move on to our actual action item about creating the work group / task force, whatever we want to call it? Anybody? No. Okay. Then we'll actually move on to our action item, which is creation of a broadband work group. Does anybody like to make a motion to create our broadband work group.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Quinn seconds. Is there any, you kind of got the background from our county manager about how that would work. I don't know if with this motion, if we actually have to start, I mean, we can follow Dan's recommendations as far as the creation, but at least the initial group, but I could see where we could potentially add, perhaps a couple of a couple of the larger employers in Dunn County might be good, and especially if there's a larger rural business that might be, I'm actually thinking of the place up in Ridgeland that makes the dumpsters up
Mhm.
there is a pretty,
Nedlands.
yeah, Nedland is a pretty big firm up there, and they might be a representative from just outside of the Menominee area. So
And I think Dan's vision for some of that, and he happens to be on spring break this week. Otherwise he would be here himself, but, because when this.
why couldn't he just zoom in no
Um,
matter where he is?
Public, yes. And when this report says it's from Chris Corpola and Dan Dunbar, yeah, Chris Corpola's name got typed on there. Dan
I
Dunbar
see.
created this very nice little report. So,
Yes.
but, Dan, I think Dan's vision for that is to have this core committee and then bring in, people for kind of more focused feedback. So, because there's the whole piece of all of the ISPs and sort of bringing them together. There's the piece of industry, there's the piece, I mean, you can attract a person from K-12 education, but the reality of it is that's an issue across the county. So I think he's just thinking that get a core started of a workable sized group and then bring ad hoc and or kind of focus group kind of people together as needed.
Sounds like a good start to me. Supervisor Quinn.
Oh, thank you. This really, I like this plan a lot and glad we're going on it. From looking at the materials, it looked like a fair amount of the plan would involve gaining access for our citizens, especially lower income citizens. And so one thing to think about, and I'm sure Dan's got this in his mind, is who would be a good partner in helping us figure out how to access those people and maybe even assist with access when we get the funding to do it.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on. I think there are two pieces of it, and one obviously is the infrastructure and getting broadband, making it available to everyone. But the second point is making it affordable to all the people who need it.
Any other discussion? If not, all of those in favor of creating the broadband work group signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So it passes. Announcements. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 11th. Does anybody else have any other announcements they care to share with the committee? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank